Hey, Joe, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Well, thanks for having me, Brian. Hello, Joe Dabrowski. I've been in sales since I was 16 years old. I was born and raised in upstate New York, and college in New England, and started my real professional sales career right after college.
Yeah. And why sales though?
It's a question I ask myself a lot.
Every day.
I mean, let's just face it. I maybe wasn't the best academic student growing up.
Well, you went to a great school, right?
To a decent school.
Yeah.
So it just was never really motivated by much other than having great conversations with people. I loved business. My dad was a business person. I heard him talking to his peers when I was younger. My mom was actually in real estate when we
Oh,
were
cool.
really young, so she was kind of in sales, and it made a lot of sense. And when I was 16, I got this job selling patio furniture and pool cleaning equipment in Connecticut, and I got to interact with customers, and the um, the reps would come in from the furniture manufacturers, and they would tell us about the warranties and how the things are made and how they pitch it. And I was like, "This is for me." We got so into learning about it, like 16 years old, slinging $30,000 patio furniture sets. I mean, absolutely awesome.
Yeah. And so you went right into the fire at EMC, which is, I guess, a great training ground. Certainly at that time, they were red hot.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, picture it's 2002. I'm graduating college, decent school. I'm going to go into sales, right? It's kind of my thing. So I did get one job maybe before EMC selling CLEC, right? So competitive local exchange carrier. But what I realized was that was a sales job and not a career.
Okay.
So when I got that call from EMC, I got into EMC. I was like, they're going to invest in me. It's a training program. I'm going to learn about whatever storage is, right? They were one of the four henchmen of the internet at the time,
Yep.
right? And they had just gone through the crash, and they were rebooting their sales development program back in Boston, consolidating it. And I was like, this is the golden ticket for me.
And is that what you were looking for as a career instead of just a job?
Yeah, 100%. Right. Again, I had the first couple months where I saw people just, great people. They just weren't committed to the craft of it. Right. It was more of this like transactional thing. Can I kind of trick people into selling versus like aligning to a business problem, having a great outcome, having a long-standing relationship, actually like providing value, right? A value exchange, if you will. I think those are the things that I thought that would sales would be great, right? About sales. So that's what I wanted to go towards.
And is that what motivates you? Is that your driver?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, you always talk about sales and money and all that stuff. And there was more of a component of that when I was younger, establishing myself and, providing. I've got a family now and all that. But over time, what I've realized is one, that human connection of like being a partner to someone is something that I just absolutely enjoy. You're connecting on a different level. Again, there's a certain amount of respect that's built and trust, and I think those are really important things. And then as I've matured into a sales leader, it's all about developing the next generation, giving somebody that chance, that opportunity to, uh, you know, get on a different plane, change their lives, like change the lives for their families and their children. And I've been lucky enough to have that experience a handful of times.
And what do you think differentiated you as a seller?
I break it down to I had a great boss once, early in my career, and he said, don't just be better on one thing, break it down to 100 little things
Yeah.
and be better 1% of each one of them. So that's really what I've focused on over the years is like, how do I continue to evolve, change the game, if you will, just get a little bit better on all these little things. And like over time, you'll continue to win, right?
Yeah.
And you'll just be better than the competition. Because as you know, Brian, I look at sales, it's a zero-sum game, right? Some people got to win, some people got to lose.
Right. You both don't win.
Yeah.
And how did you go through that? Did you have a system or was it just a mindset or
It was a mindset early, and then curious. I read a decent amount of books over the years, but sort of guardrails, right? I've done some
yeah.
sales training. Those are guardrails. Again, I went on a lot of sales calls, right? I think that's it. It's activity, getting comfortable in those moments. Um, having fun with it, right?
Yeah.
The prepping for them, debriefing from them. It's a team sport. The way high tech selling is a team sport. We've got engineers and specialists and even some bosses sometimes, and all sorts of things. So breaking down every opportunity I had and like how do I insert just one, two, three more things to better align to the customer or better differentiate the product or better identify the problem and find the pain with the problem and the implication of the pain of the problem. So it's been 22, 23 years of high tech selling and just self-reflection.
Yeah. And do you keep notes? Do you have a journal? Do you have a system or
So it's funny you mentioned that. I was kind of doing a little yearly spring cleaning, whatever you call it, as we hit 2024.
once a
And I found
year?
my stack of notebooks, right? Because I'm still an analog guy when I go and meet with people, right? And I was looking back through some of the sales calls and like I've definitely gotten better in the last maybe 5 or 10 years at finding pain and inflicting pain. I'll tell you that much.
Well, I think too many reps look at it as a black box where they think it's all about value or talking to the right person or challenging them. Like there's one little tweak.
No, it's a this is what I think I love about it. It's kind of like collecting wine or something like that. You can never hit the end of the rainbow. You can
Deep.
never you can never read all of the internet, right?
I'm
Always something
finished.
else for me. Yeah, I got to the internet. I'm done here. Like, move on to something else. Like, I don't think that's how it works with sales, right?
It isn't. But a lot of people, after 3 years, stop.
Yeah, yeah. I think it comes down to enabling people to be great, right? And there's that saying out there, like people don't leave jobs, they leave their leaders, right? And again, sales has some negative connotations to it. Again, that like kind of high pressure type thing
Yeah.
versus this like, hey, I'm a business enabler. I'm here to kind of do some matchmaking. I'm here to be a critical thinker, a problem solver, right? I look at it more of that side of it than this like, somebody trying to sell you a wallet on, in a market
Right.
somewhere, right?
And you picked probably the toughest segment. Was that a conscious
Um,
choice or was that something you slid into?
Probably just didn't know any better. I mean, it's dynamic, right? It's competitive. It's cutthroat. We say it's knife fighting all the time, right?
Well, not
Um,
just, I'm talking about your territory.
oh, well, yeah.
Sled is like, I mean, other than
Yeah.
going into a new country.
Well, just for a little background, right? Right. What I do now is I lead slide organization for the US for a company called Rubric, right? And Rubric is started really as a backup and IT infrastructure company and has changed and melded and converted as the problem shifted, right, into a cyber recovery company. So in essence, we're consolidating some markets, right? So that even makes it tougher, right? Because your
Yeah.
persona is very different. Um, but let's face it, and there's an unfortunate reality out there, which is the public sector in general has been targeted and specifically attacked by bad actors, right?
Sure.
And one of the reasons I chose to go into SLED was to help those who don't have the resources all the time to fight back, right?
Yeah.
They're attacking our people, and I take a lot of pride in helping state governments, local governments, education institutions, defend that student data, that constituent data, uh, provide resiliency. I mean, um, it's what gets me out of bed in the morning instead of what keeps me awake at night.
And how do you keep your team focused and motivated? Because when you talk to public sector reps, there's a whole lot of reasons why nothing's getting done, right?
Yeah,
It's called a
yeah,
bureaucracy for a reason.
yeah. It's not, I mean, it can be tough, right? There can be some, large, processes and procedures in place and timeframes and all that. But that's no different than large enterprise selling in my experience, right? You call on some of the largest
Except for
ones.
there's no profit motive.
Yeah, that's true. I would say though, I've only been inside a handful of years. I have seen more people trying to do the right thing
Yeah,
versus
good.
hide behind the machine as far as like customers and all that. So trust me, I was a little worried about, that type of stuff going into it.
Yeah.
There are some perceptions out there.
Yeah.
But again, the problem statement for what we sell is changing, right? The bad guys are after us. Uh, Sales in general's changed. So I just think there's an evolution going on there with those customers too. And we're excited to be a part of it.
Yeah. And what was it like getting into leadership for the first time?
Good question. So I chose to go into leadership probably about 14 years ago for the first time. So I was pretty young, right? I was in my
Yeah.
mid to late 20s, working at a pretty good company, growing, a large district, right? And I think the thing that kind of got me then was more of the work-life balance, to be honest. When I went into leadership the first time, I just had my first child.
Wow.
And what I realized is maybe I weren't doing both of those things exceedingly well, right? And that was a tough lesson to learn. So I actually got into leadership and then got out of it after a handful of years because I needed to kind of focus on me and my family and things
Yep.
like that. And and maybe about 4 years ago, I got back into it. And it was one of those, Brian, it was like I had a decision to make. It was like, do I go down the left path or the right path? Blue pill, red pill type of thing. And I do remember having a conversation with somebody I trust very dearly. And she was like, you got to do it. Like the team needs you to do this. It sounds like this is your opportunity. And we've done really well with it since. So
Yep.
I'm really happy to see the output of the people that we're able to hire and build up to be, A players and have them make life-changing money and solve big problems for customers and build lifelong relationships. I'm so glad I'm back in the space where I can see it, right? Instead of
Yep.
just saying my peers did something cool. It's like I get to watch that develop. And that's the coolest part of my job.
And how did you get your work-life balance in balance? Because clearly you felt that being an individual contributor gave you more focus and control.
Yeah, it did. It was really one of just, kind of, I think maturing on my side, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of soul searching, right? A lot of focusing on like what was important to me and what do I want my life to look like, not what is the logical next step, what is expected of me, what do
Yeah.
others want me to do? So I had to get grounded in me first. And I think maybe at that time I had lost a little bit of that. It's a crazy time. You get married, you have kids, you buy houses, like life hits you fast, right?
Sure does.
And I didn't want to, let it get out of control. Because people needed me at the time. I think I had 11 direct reports or something too, right? So, the ratio was a little off, and it was a good decision to get out, and it was an excellent decision to get back into it because I found my passion.
Yeah. What's the hardest part about it?
The hardest part about it is, um, I think twofold. Well, I think the first thing is, sometimes I'm not always excited about certain things, right? And kind of separating like, maybe my personal view from like what's the best thing for the business, right?
Yeah.
So I think
That's hard.
it's always a kind of a challenge, right? Because you got people involved, you got like the business involved, and where those two things meet, that's where, you can have those type of, I guess, concerns, if you will. So I think that was kind of the first thing. And then I, I I'll just leave it at that. I think. I mean,
Okay.
that's
Well, I mean, there's also like when you're the quarterback on the deal, you're kind of leading it. Then all of a sudden you're on the sideline of the deal
yeah, you're calling the play sometimes. Yeah.
or observing the
Yeah,
play.
observing the play watch. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's right? First line sales leader, it's a tough thing to balance that, like inspiring, managing. Sometimes you have to kind of show them how it's done,
Relinquishing
but you don't want to
control.
over rotate to be in the super rep, right? Because that's a no good thing. And that was maybe one I didn't do well with early, right? Because I was
Yeah.
so good at selling. And let's face it, back then, right, at this time frame, if you knew the market and you had a great whiteboard pitch and then you had some good SEs that could do a demo, you're winning the deal. Like, so it was like a very transactional sale, even though it was complex and
It was easier.
strategic. Yeah, it was easier. It was like just master that piece of it and then, be a deal person. And I think we can all agree, like the world has definitely moved on from that type of selling and has evolved.
And how do you deal with reps who don't take the meticulous approach that you do?
Oh, well, so this is a good one, right? I think you have to explain the why. Like you always got to start with the why, right? And I think sometimes leaders forget that like they just know the way, so they'll just go, here's the way.
Do it.
They
Yeah.
never explain like is like the why or the current state challenge. Like again, you put it in the same context you put a customer problem. What is your current state? What are the challenges with it? Like where do we want to go and what are we going to get out of it?
Yeah.
Our gap is what we need to solve for. Okay, great. Like now we've identified that. So that's I think that's just one of them, right? Is like diving into getting them motivated to maybe put a little bit more, whether it be process or change some way of how they're selling, have a stronger point of view, right? I don't think anyone could argue with that in general, but if you just tell them to create a document that shows your point of view, like that's what you're going to get. You're not going to actually, you're going to get compliance. You're not going to get commitment of like, no, I can actually talk about their business. I know what they're worried about at the risk level. I know what their challengers are doing, all that type of stuff, right? So uh, I think that's one great example of like how you can actually spin someone quick because it's not that hard and it's always in your benefit to know more about your customer. So why don't we just start with them and then we'll start with what we do, you
Yeah.
know?
And what do you look for when you're hiring?
Uh, a lot of times, athletic backgrounds help a lot for what we do,
Yeah.
right? Because they've had to grind, they've had to fight through. Teamwork, right, is a big one, right?
Feedback,
Feedback, right? Dealing with difficult
competitiveness, yeah.
coaches and all that stuff, right? So
Emotional
that's
regulation. Yeah.
a huge one, right? I look for people with a motor, right? I think
Yeah.
that's the one because if their parents didn't teach them that by the time they're 20, like there's no way you're going to teach them that, like flat out, right? So start with the motor, do a lot of back channeling, right? And kind of talking to my peers. As you know, this area, this DC area is a pretty tight knit community. So if you build a network, but that's been a challenge as I scaled to cover the country, right? How to like kind of you do that all over the country. So it's all about the will with me. Um, we can build the skills, but having a background in some of the domains we're in and experiences with that, examples of that. I love hearing about people like how they got into the biggest deal they ever did. Tell me how you opened up that opportunity. How did you build a champion? How'd you test your champion? Like that type of stuff. Those are the things
Yeah.
I ask people to really figure out like, were they in a good position? Did they get good coaching along the way? Are they a grinder? Did they have success 10 years ago and maybe not the last two? There's a lot that goes into that. So, um,
And what have you made a mistake on in hiring that you won't make a mistake on again?
yeah, there's just a few non-negotiables with me, Brian.
Yeah.
Again, it's like one of those things where you think you can change someone's will because they so likable or they won these deals. Like, another one I'm just not a big fan of is like, oh, I know this one account. This is why you should hire me. Like,
The Rolodex
okay.
deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Rolodex hero, right? So that doesn't necessarily impress me all that much. People that ask great questions in interviews, right? Come prepared with a lot of insightful questions, right? Not just about like the job, but the company, maybe even me and my experiences. You know, people who come with a point of view, right?
Yeah.
Like on why they want to work at a company where I'm leading, right? So um, the good news is I've met unbelievable candidates all over the country, and I think the future is bright for high tech sales.
And how do you cut through the interview mask to really, do you have litmus tests for
Yeah,
certain?
we do. We do. We have a testing process that we use. And it's really the job boiled down, right?
Yeah.
Give some people some homework, they go off and do some stuff and they come back and kind of interact with us in a way that puts them in the moment of having this job. And I think the biggest thing we can do when we're going through that hiring process is make sure it's also a kind of a two-way fit, right? I think,
Yes.
I go in saying, can this candidate get past my doors through my guards? And they're going, can I get the job? Do you want to work there? Is
Right.
this the right cultural fit for you? Is this a place where you can see yourself learning and growing? Right? Sure, the comp's good, but what about the learning? Like, what skills are you going to take away? Will you be a different seller, a more efficient, a more effective seller coming out than you went in? Or is it just another job? So kind of where we started, right? Are you growing that career? Or are you just having good years?
And what do you see out there that you don't like about what salespeople are doing today?
Anybody that puts their integrity on the line
Yeah.
for a sale, I can't stand it because it tarnishes the
Profession.
whole group. Yeah, the whole profession, right? Hey, I can't like I come in with good intentions, right? I come in with a history of aligning to customers, and I could give you a bunch of people you probably know that would call me and be like, yes, he like treats us with respect, does well, like always does what he says, never gives us, too much, right? But I've seen it out there and I've walked into rooms where they're like, listen, no offense, but I just don't trust salespeople because I've been burned before. And it's like, oh, I hope that person's really enjoying that commission check they got on that because they just like really hurt us all. They set us all back. And I just be honest, be trustworthy, have
Yeah.
integrity. Like, the ponds we swim in aren't that big. Hey,
Well, especially in B2B, can you really trick anybody into anything? It's like there's this like
yeah,
large time gaps. It's so hard to sell them something they want, never mind what they don't want, right? So
right, right.
the hurdles are so difficult.
Yeah, I'm talking more in like competitive selling, right?
Oh, I see.
When
Yeah.
you're in like, comparative differentiation or unique differentiate. Oh, we have that too, or it's on the roadmap type thing. And like,
Yeah.
I haven't even thought of it yet. Like, that type of thing, right? I mean, it's pretty big in my industry right now. You can,
Oh, I bet. Yeah. FUD.
the
Right.
market, no, it's not just FUD. It's like the market stealing marketing. Like,
Oh, just copying the website
literally
and
copying stuff like the words, the verbiage. It's like, oh my gosh, I've seen it. It's been pretty bad the last 3 or 4 years, right?
yeah. And are you leading leaders now? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
I
And
am.
what do you look for in sales leaders?
The ability to inspire people, right? I think they have to be operationally excellent. Yeah, they hired well before, right? So it's a three R's: recruit, revenue, retain. So that's really kind of how I look at it. Um, I'm not against giving people first time leadership jobs. I've actually got a couple of them right now, doing well, right? So it's all about, kind of meeting them where they're at. I think helping from at least a higher level, build that culture of like trust and respect and, storytelling and asking great questions and, building your brand and being operationally effective. And I mean, I got like hundreds of these things we constantly kind of go through, right? Um, you know, uh, Being the mayor of your territory, another great concept, right? Can they
Yeah.
inspire people to become the mayor so that, everyone knows them? Hey, we're in a channel model. We've got alliance partners. They can help me get in there. I'll get in here. I'll tell a great story over here. Oh, this customer just moved. Let's go. Like, that's it, right? It's a high activity pipeline generation heavy. So pipeline generation first culture, where they celebrate customer success. We catch people doing stuff right, right? So we
Yep.
celebrate the little wins along the way. It's not just, hey, Sally won $1 billion deal. It's Sally sent a really good email and got to an executive buyer. Like, okay, let's celebrate that because everyone can do that today. Not everyone can close $1 billion deal tomorrow.
Yep. And let's say a rep comes to you, shows interest in becoming a leader. How do you tell if they're ready? And if they're not ready, how do you tell them they're not ready?
Yeah, well, candor is an important thing, right? So, I think we start with, have you become, top 5% in what you're doing today? Because that's really what we're looking for you to become a leader is like subject matter expertise. You have to really know that job. And in essence, what you've had to have done is like slowed it down so you can make good decisions, right? New leaders, things are coming at them so fast that they're reactive. Whereas I think people that are more comfortable in that job, It's kind of like the old Wayne Gretzky, right? How did Wayne Gretzky have so much time to make great plays in hockey? He understood the game way better than everyone else. When he was 7 years old, he's tracing the puck around, on TV, and his dad made him do that, right? So he learned the game, and so it's on me to then, build these new leaders, teach them that game, get them out of being that, either a rep, start thinking like a second line sometimes, and create that, again, the gap between where they're at, where they want to go. Okay, here's what we need to focus on.
Yeah. And if they're not ready, what do you tell them?
Here's the things you got to work on, right?
Yeah.
Very honest conversation of like, you need to get better in these three things. And then, again, I think many companies now, when they get to mid-size, are starting to really address this problem head on. How do we create a machine where you can start as an SDR and you end up as a CRO, right? And how do we enable them along the way, right? To be the best rep they could, to learn how to recruit, to become a great first line leader and excellent at that, nailing forecasts, all that stuff. And then, cool, how do we inspire people? How do we get in front of problems 6 months in front of them? How do we use data to make better decisions? Keep going up. Got to teach them all that stuff. Those are all skills you can learn, right?
Yeah.
So you just need to be aware and focus on them.
And what do you see more? The person who focuses more on the admin one of becoming a leader, or the person who accelerates at revenue generation but isn't doing the other parts of the job wants to become a leader?
It's
Maybe
usually
because
the
the
it's yeah,
period
it's
of their
usually the
career.
revenue side wants to step up first, and they have to learn the hygiene side, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the world we live in, right? In this part of the market that I sell in, it's so dynamic, so high paced. The pressure's high. It's so competitive. So those are the people that rise to the top. They're not the people that necessarily have the cleanest sales force or whatever, right?
And how do you keep your work-life balance now? Because I can't imagine their demands have gone down.
No, I've slowed the game down, like I said, a little bit.
That's smart. All right. Yeah.
Right. This is one I think I have a great answer for. I was actually sitting probably a couple of years ago with the CEO of our company who's in town, and I asked him this question, right? I'm like, hey, Bipple, like, how do you have balance? VC, run a company, all that stuff. You've got two young kids. He's like, you can't chase your tail on that. He's like, you'll never actually have balance.
Yeah.
You're always going to be upset with yourself. If work's going to demand more of you, your kids will demand more of you. So you're never going to have balance. You need to make hard decisions. That's what you need to do, right? You need to get focused on the most important things instead of the whirlwind of life. It was kind of the advice he gave me. And I think that changed my outlook, because I think before I was really trying to find that perfect balance where
It
things
doesn't
work. It's
exist.
just, it's a fool's errand, right?
Yeah.
It's a good idea. And trust me, you don't want to turn your back on your kids or your wife
18 years later.
or your job, right? Like, I'm not going to
I
disappear for
can't
four
do that
weeks and just
either.
go skiing. Like, I'd love to go to Park City for 4 weeks, Brian, but
Yeah.
not in the cards. So
And I got you have a great point there about slowing it down and not being reactive. Because I think in sales, that's one of the key challenges everyone has. They feel comfort being busy feels like you're being effective.
effective and efficient, yeah.
Thinking makes you feel like you're procrastinating.
Yeah.
But thinking is what you need to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, again, it's you're gonna walk into a first call and just ask generic questions and all that, or are you gonna come in with a point of view
Right,
on their
right.
business and their challenges? I mean, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, cool. Hey, Joe, really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
LinkedIn, Joe.Dabrowski, Dabrowski.